Good morning, everybody. Welcome to December the 1st. We're continuing our readings in Ezekiel, and today we're in chapter 44. Now in Ezekiel chapter 44, the Lord shows Ezekiel that once the glory of the Lord has entered the temple, then the gate will be shut forever. In other words, the glory of the Lord will never depart from the temple of the Lord forever. Wow, what an amazing thing that is. Also, you'll notice that David, the prince, will sit in the gate and eat bread before the Lord forever. And so will come to pass what David wrote in Psalm 23 verse 6. He said, "And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." You see, the Bible is one book. And this prophecy here is going to be fulfilled in the prophecy of Psalm 23 is going to be fulfilled in the day of the Lord. Okay, David will enter the temple by the porch gate. And by the way, when it says that he will eat bread in the gate, it means, you see, the gate is the place where the administration of the whole of the city takes place. So this is where the elders would sit, and it's where the magistrates would sit. It was where the law court was. It's the gate of the city, and because it's the gate, it means that they can use that gate as an instrument of justice and of blessing. They can open the gate to strangers, and they can open the gate to the godly and to the righteous, but they can shut the gate to the wicked and to the evil. See, they have and this is where we get this concept even today, when someone's given the freedom of the city, or they're given the keys of the city. And that's what of course the Lord Jesus was talking about when he said to Peter, "I'm going to give you the keys." It means that he was going to become the administrator of the kingdom. Anyway, let's go back to the passage. So David will enter the temple by the porch gate, and then the Lord took Ezekiel to the north gate and told him to very carefully observe the laws of the house of the Lord. Into this temple no uncircumcised or unclean man or sinner will enter there. The psalmist says, "Who shall ascend unto the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity," etc., etc. So the old priests will never again come before the Lord in service, but Zadok's priests will serve the Lord. And the reason for that is because the old Levitical priests, they offered sacrifices on behalf of the priest, on behalf of the people, to idols. So the Lord will cut off their ministry, and he will begin a new ministry. They will be the priests of Zadok. And then the Lord prescribes the priestly garments. They will be white linen. They will not shave their heads or let their hair hang long. They will, in other words, they will be polled. The idea of polling is that the hair will be drawn up into a single thread and cut off, and that's what's called polling the head. And they will not take wives that are divorced or widows, and they will take pure virgins to wife. They will teach the people the difference between holy and profane, and to understand the difference between holy and unclean meat. They will stand as judges to settle disputes. And so the Lord goes on explaining the priestly office. Next, the Lord gives instruction regarding the division of the land. The Lord gives very precise instructions on how the land of Israel is to be divided. In the center of the land will be the temple, surrounded by an area for the priests to live. Each side of the city there will be a portion for David the prince, stretching from the Mediterranean Sea all the way to the Dead Sea. Instructions are given for correct weights and measures, and this will bring justice and equity. And then the Lord gives instruction regarding burnt offerings and when they are to be made. Can anyone doubt that these events are future in our day? That they're not symbolic at all? These are actual, real events. You know, if it were a parable, you wouldn't describe the length of some ground. You wouldn't describe the length of some ground. No, this isn't a parable. This is describing the actual business on the ground in the Jerusalem, in the Zion of the future. Now, there are some fascinating and some interesting parts to this chapter. I want to bring your attention to just a few of them. Let's look at the first chapter again, verse 1, 2 and 3. Then he brought me back the way of the gate to the outward sanctuary, which looketh towards the east, and it was shut. Then the Lord said unto me, This gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter in by it, because the Lord, the God of Israel, hath entered in by it. Therefore it shall be shut. It is for the prince. The prince, he shall sit in it to eat bread before the Lord. He shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the way of the same. Now, the Muslims thought that they knew which gate it was. They presumed that it was an eastern gate of the city. However, they misunderstood. And there was a gate built on the wall of Jerusalem, which the Muslims bricked up. They bricked it up. And not only did they brick it up, but they bricked it up and then they put a cemetery, a Muslim cemetery, in front of the gate. This had the plan that it would prevent the prince from ever coming and entering into the city, because they had blocked the gate and they had put unholy things on the ground. But you see the misunderstanding here. First of all, they're misunderstanding two things. First of all, they're misunderstanding that this isn't the gate of the city in verse 1. This is the gate of the sanctuary. And the sanctuary doesn't exist today. It hasn't existed since AD 70. The temple was taken down completely and destroyed in such a way that this gate, this porch, doesn't exist at all. It doesn't exist today. It was completely removed. So what about the Muslim plan to stop the Lord Jesus coming into the city? Well, they're missing a couple of things. First of all, they're missing the fact that the Lord Jesus can easily open a gate into the city. If he can call the walls of Jericho to fall down, then he can take a stone out of a gateway to open it up anyway. And also, putting a cemetery in front of the feet of the Lord Jesus doesn't prevent him. Because, you see, it would prevent an ordinary Jew from remaining clean if he touched a dead body. However, the Lord Jesus, when he touches a dead body, he doesn't become unclean. No. It is the dead that become clean when he touches them. And in fact, in the case of the Lord Jesus, when he touches a dead person, they come back to life. And there's nothing unclean about being alive. So they're wrong on also so many accounts. They're wrong about the location of the gate. And they're also wrong in their superstition, thinking that they can prevent the prince from coming and entering into Zion. Now, there's an awful lot of other things in this passage that I find fascinating, but I want to come right the way down to near the end. Near the end is absolutely fascinating. Verse 21, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, you shall have the Passover, a feast of 7 days. Unleavened bread shall be eaten, and upon that day shall the prince prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bullock for a sin offering. Now, I want to just point something out here. The Passover was not a sin offering. The Passover was an offering of dedication of the firstborn to the Lord. That's what the Passover was. And the blood was put upon the the lamb was killed in the threshold of the door, in that sort of a hollowed out pool, and the blood was then taken and put on the doorpost and on the lintel. What that did is it signified to the angel of the Lord that he was not to enter into that household. Now there was no confession of sin made over the animal. It wasn't a sin offering. It was an offering of dedication of the firstborn to the Lord. But it's very interesting, and of course all the Passovers down the centuries have never had a sin offering on the day of the Passover. And the reason for that is because on the day of the Passover, from midnight onwards, all through that day, the children of Israel were walking, and it was a holy day. It was a Sabbath day. There was no work done, even by the priests. There was no work done. There was no sin offering made, because on that day they walked. They didn't stop to make a sin offering. They walked out of the land of Egypt. Now what's very interesting here is that in the millennial temple there will be the Passover will be remembered in the same way that it's always been remembered, always, from the beginning. However, on that day also there will be a sin offering. And so we see a union between the Lord Jesus, who is the firstborn from the dead. He is the firstborn. He is the Passover lamb. But he's also the sin offering, you see. And so a sin offering will be made on that day. And then verse 23, 7 days of the feast you shall prepare a burnt offering to the Lord. Now notice the burnt offering is a different offering again. It's different to the Passover and different to the sin offering. This is an offering of worship to the Lord. It's all burnt up. It comes up into the nostrils of the Lord, and he smells a sweet savour. You see, when the Lord Jesus died on the cross, he didn't just die for sin. He died for God. There was something about what he did there that had nothing to do with sin. This was a life offered up, and his life offered up was a sweet smelling savour to his Father. It was something beautiful to him. And so there we are. Now take a look at verse 25. In the 7th month, okay, and on the 15th day of the month, okay, you shall do like of the feast of the 7 days, according to the sin offering, according to the burnt offering, according to the meat offering, and according to the oil offering. Wow. So we can see, can't we, that in the millennium, when the temple is built and the glory of the Lord comes in and the new priests take their place, there will be all the offerings of the Lord. All the 5 offerings of the Lord will be there. Can't wait to see it, can you? Well, God bless you. Great to speak to you, and look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. Bye for now.